Hello and welcome to this episode of the Maryland Risk Management Education Podcast. My name is Paul Geringer and I'm the Extension Legal Specialist here in the Department of Ag and Resource Economics at the University of Maryland. And today I'm going to do an update on some podcast episodes I've released in the past, slowly over time, talking about either the Syngenta lawsuit and now the Syngenta settlement process. These are things many of you ask me questions about, when are checks going to come out? When are checks going to come out? When are checks going to come out now that this lawsuit has settled? So, this information has slowly been released, and I'm going to give a little bit of update on that at the end of this, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the litigation just to give you a refresher. So if you've listened to me talk about the litigation in the past, you can go ahead and fast forward to the very end. I would say probably around the last 2-minute mark, and you'll get to that spot. But for those that do not know anything about the process, let me give a little bit of history. In late 2018, the settlement order was approved in this lawsuit involving the MIR 162 variety that Syngenta released that then caused problems with China rejecting shipments of U.S. corn because this variety showed up in shipments to China. This approval was for a $1.51 billion settlement in this litigation. Based on the final order, payments to producers should have started going out in the second quarter of 2019. We are in the second quarter of 2019, but at this time, that has not happened. But recently, the settlement website was updated to show how those class members can participate, checks coming out. And we'll talk about that more here in a few minutes. But the settlement includes all U.S. corn growers, including those who opted out of the original class action in many cases, and those who grew Agrosure Duracade corn and Agrosure Viptera corn varieties. The settlement will also include landlords who base rental rates on yield or price, such as flex leases based on yield or price, or crop share leases. Fixed cash landlords are not eligible to participate in this. You did not have a risk of loss or any ownership interest in the crop. In the other cases, you probably would have ownership interest in the crop. The payment period in the settlement is from September 15, 2013 through the 2018 crop year. The settlement includes 4 classes. Class 1 is growers and eligible landlords who did not use Duracade or Viptera seeds. Class 2 is growers or eligible landlords who did use those seed varieties. Class 3 is grain handlers, and Class 4 is ethanol producers. Claims to 3 of the 4 classes have limited recovery amounts. Class 1 will receive a minimum of $1.44 billion, with the bulk of the settlement going to corn growers and eligible landlords who did not grow these seed varieties. Class 2 will be limited to $22.6 million. Class 3 will be limited to $29.9 million. And Class 4 will be limited to $19.5 million. As a part of the settlement order, the court set aside a little over $500 million for attorney's fees. And then later, in some later orders, the judge clarified how attorney's fees should be divided up. They were 49% to the pool for the Kansas multi-district litigation attorneys, 23.5% of that money to the pool for Minnesota state court attorneys, 15.5% to go to the pool for Illinois state court attorneys, and then 12% was to be divided up among the individually retained private attorneys, or the IRPs, PAs. Excuse me. This later order invalidates many of the contingent fee agreements that these IRPAs had come up. This is where attorneys would collect a percentage of the amount recovered by their clients in the settlement. Several IRPAs are currently appealing the final order, arguing the judge did not have the authority to invalidate fee agreements or contingent fee agreements. At the same time, other appeals are ongoing from class members claiming the settlement process is unfair to the class members. These ongoing appeals Appeals could potentially impact how settlement checks are distributed, but from recent posts on www.cornseedsettlement.com, growers who participated in the suit should expect to see information coming out sometime in July, with potential checks coming in 2022, February of 2022. So, with that said, we should be looking at potentially information talking to you about how much money you're going to get coming out later this year, with final checks being issued starting around February of next year. This is all subject to change. I would encourage you to check the Corn Seed Settlement website periodically just to see what the latest information is related to when these checks will come out. But at this point, we're anticipating February of 2020 when these checks will finally start being issued to you. You're noticing that in this, we don't have any examples of how much you would get paid in this process as well. That's because in a lot of cases, we don't know how much you would get paid, because in the end, it depends on how many growers actually filed in that process to be able to collect part of the settlement. So because we don't know how many growers actually went in and did the paperwork, and we don't know the acreage, we don't know the production that's associated with this, it's really hard for us to come up with exact numbers. So this is something, when you get the piece of paper, many of us who have been following this are kind of looking to see what some of these settlement checks will look like in the end. So thank you again for listening. And if you have any questions, please email me at lgoering@umd.edu, or you can tweet me or follow me on Instagram and, ask me questions that way at AgLawPaul. Thank you again for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day.